Excite Truck, the insanely fun and criminally underrated off-road racing game that served as Monster Gaming's release title for the Nintendo Wii all the way back in 2006. A game I hold dear as one of the first experiences that led me to the absolute nerd I am today. With some epic stunts, crazy physics, a variety of vehicles, and the most bangin' rock and roll / metal fusion soundtrack imaginable, this game absolutely still holds up today. I played back through it again recently and noticed that some trucks just felt objectively better than others. Even trucks with better stats just feel like they simply don't perform, while others feel way better than they should. So I decided to make a tier list on an 18-year-old game that I've literally never seen played competitively. Yeah. So in order to effectively explain my ranking of these trucks, I first need to explain the premise of the game. It is, as you'd imagine, a racing game, but there's more to it. While you race, you need to perform stunts or meet criteria to earn stars. The main ones I'll be talking about include drift, air, jump combos, rings, tree runs, and truck smashes. There are also others, such as truck throws, nice crashes, and air spins, though in my experience, these often have minimal impact, especially considering nice crashes can't have a super variant, and air spins or truck throws are nearly impossible to super. A super involves getting 5 stars of something all at once. For example, passing 5 trees in a row really closely nets you a super tree run, or slamming into another truck hard enough nets you a super truck smash. As for the stunts that can be supered, drift, air, rings, jump combos, tree runs, and truck smashes, I'll briefly explain them. Drift and air are relatively self-explanatory. Hold a drift or stay in the air long enough to earn the stars. Low traction vehicles excel with drifting, while high-speed, high-air vehicles excel with air. Jump combos work in tandem with one of this game's stunt mechanics, the turbo jump. Right as you leave an incline and go airborne, if you tap the turbo button, you can perform a turbo jump. Landing these back-to-back as you land can get jump combo stars, which also nets you air stars in the process. Rings are unique, only appearing after a terraformer is activated. These often require a good deal of air and airtime, as well as aerial control. 5 appear at a time, so jumping through all 5 gives you super rings. Tree runs involve getting close enough to trees without hitting them and crashing. Most tracks have a dedicated alley with trees on either side to net at least 1 super tree run. Ordinarily, smaller, high-traction or handling vehicles excel here. Truck smashes are by far the most volatile super to get. They're very dependent on speed as well as the truck-to-truck matchup. Some trucks require less speed to smash, while others won't get smashed until excessively heavy impacts are made. In some cases, this is the easiest super to get, as you can turbo and steer into the nearest truck right at the start of a race for a free super. Next, we have to discuss truck stats and how they affect the vehicle's viability. The stats are simple: speed, turbo, air, grip, and handling. Most stats are shown via a meter, while handling can be rated slow, medium, or quick. Speed is incredibly simple. How fast does a truck move? Easy. Turbo, on the other hand, is a bit more complicated. The turbo button, in my opinion, is the main source of acceleration, as using it, as opposed to not, is literally a night and day difference. Many trucks benefit immensely from their turbo, though in most cases, speed and turbo stats don't differ by much. Each truck has a turbo gauge in the bottom right of the UI. As you use your turbo, your temperature increases. If you increase it too much, you'll overheat, rendering you unable to use turbo until your engine cools, which is very slow. The way to circumvent this is to be airborne and land nice landings often, which are smooth landings from jumps that basically give you free turbo. Water can also instantly cool your engine, but the drawback is that water obviously isn't everywhere, even if it is incredibly common to run into across the tracks. Lower turbo stats result in faster heating and therefore less turbo. Next up is the air stat. The air stat refers to the hang time a truck is capable of and how easily a truck flies. However, height from a jump is determined by the speed and the terrain angle that the truck jumped from. So realistically, air is more so dependent on your speed and turbo stats, because if you can't jump high, you won't be getting much hang time regardless. I think this may also affect your aerial control, but I'm not 100% certain. Then we have grip, and that's also pretty self-explanatory. How well is this truck going to hold the terrain? This isn't always representative of how well a truck will drive, though, as this works hand in hand with the final stat, handling. Handling refers to how easy a truck will turn. Quick handling obviously turns faster. However, it really depends on your playstyle as to whether or not this is helpful. Quick handling and high grip results in sharp, fast turns, which in my experience is harder to drift with or land tree runs. Slow handling and medium grip is often better in my opinion, as the turns feel about as slippery as you'd expect and not too tight or jerky. As a side note to this section, I'd like to add that I believe each truck also has a set stat that decides how easily it can smash or will be smashed by opponent trucks, which I brought up before. However, I haven't seen any direct metric of this, so take when I mention this with a grain of salt. And now, for the main event, the tier list. As a disclaimer, this is merely my opinion based on my experience and playstyle. Just because I hate a truck doesn't mean you shouldn't use it if it complements your playstyle. Without further ado, let's begin. First up, the bottom tier. Bottom of the barrel trucks. Trucks I will not use even if they are the only options. I will actively avoid these trucks at all costs. The very worst truck in the game, in my opinion, is the Firefly. This thing is so slow and gets absolutely no turbo to help it out. Gets smashed super easy and can't even take advantage of its better air stat because it simply just can't build the speed to get those jumps off. It only really excels in tree runs, but if those are the only real stars you're getting, it's not gonna be super easy to S-rank all the tracks. It is one of the starter vehicles, so it's pretty excusable, but god, this truck is so annoying. Next up, we have the Boulder. Literally the first truck you get access to. It is the truck you use in the tutorial, and it's about what you'd expect. Actually a bit faster than the Firefly at the cost of a little bit of air, but being able to use the higher speed actually gets you a bit more air time than the Firefly, because the air stats I think are like 1 to 2 points off of each other. So honestly, not as bad as you'd expect. And it smashes other trucks really good for a starter, even though it's obviously easy for it to crash out if you're trying to run into like one of the really high tier vehicles, but it's honestly whatever. The only reason this truck is so low is because it's not sustainable. In later tracks that take longer, the Boulder's weaknesses are way more apparent. Similar to the Firefly, but a bit less so. Because if you take the Boulder to like winding road in the Platinum Cup, you're gonna notice when that speed and that turbo starts weighing in. Because you have to go out of your way to cool the engine constantly. But again, it's literally the first truck you get access to, so it's better in that. It's passable in that sense, and it's still better than the Firefly. Next, we move on to the low tier, which are trucks that are still not good, but honestly aren't the worst. So, I mean, they're not bottom tier, so I mean, at least they have that. First up is, big surprise, the Wolf, the last starter truck that you have access to at the beginning of the game. It's a decent starter. It's not great at maintaining speed or airtime, but it does handle alright, I guess. It does make drifting pretty difficult, and it loses smash matchups pretty frequently, but it's a bit more sustainable than the Boulder or the Firefly, so I guess it's got that going for it. You can probably take this thing all the way through silver before you really start seeing its weakness in like gold. And even then, that's kind of pushing it, because you can see this thing start falling out in silver. Next up is the Raven. And in case you couldn't tell by how I said it, I do not like this truck. The Raven fucking sucks. And I will stand by this. I would have put it bottom tier if I didn't go back and test every truck and realize how fucking god-awful the Firefly is. I hate the Raven. I literally fucking hate the Raven. The turbo is way worse than it seems. Easily, by far, the easiest truck to overheat. And it shouldn't be that way, because the turbo stat is like not that bad, but it is so easy to overheat this thing. And the speed only really shows after jumps, which it can only do on massive ramps, because this thing does not have the air stat to have any kind of hang time. It is also very bulky, so you're not going to be getting tree runs very well. However, it does, as a result of this, win most of its smashes, so it's got that. Personally, I still hate this truck. I don't like it at all. I will literally get the 3 S ranks to unlock the paint job and go back to using the Wolf. Next up is the Dominator. It's on the slower side despite having a high speed stat, which is for some reason a trend. Turbo is a bit worse than it seems, and the air is better than what it seems, but it's honestly nothing really impressive. It's out of the 3 trucks that look pretty much exactly like the Boulder Bros, if you would, it's mid, because the Boulder's obviously it's the starter truck. It's gonna be bad, and then the Dominator, it's an unlockable, so like that kind of sucks that you unlock it and it's like a little bit better than the Boulder, but you know, it's whatever. It's all right. I still don't like using this truck. I'm not going out of my way to use it. I'm just unlocking the paint job and then going on to the next one, but it's okay. Next up, we move into the mid-tier. Trucks that I'm not going to actively avoid, but I'm not going to complain when I unlock new stuff. And there are a lot of trucks in the mid-tier, let me tell you. At the bottom of the mid-tier, we have the Dynamo. Loses smashes constantly. This thing gets beat the fuck up, and I don't know why, but it's whatever. But it can get up to and maintain its top speed pretty well, so that's good. Speed is obviously what you want in a racing game, and that's going to give it pretty okay airtime. It turns a bit too tight to drift well, or to make little corrections during tree runs, so you're probably going to run into stuff pretty often, but it's pretty alright. I mean, I'm not going to complain about using it. I'm not going to complain when I get something else, but it's kind of there. Next up, we have the Serpent. It's decent strength, works well as an aerial truck, which is honestly the first one on this list. Works well as an aerial truck, but it really pushes its turbo on the ground due to its lackluster speed. So it's held back by that, but it's pretty alright in the air. It's pretty okay. That's about what I can give it. Next up is the Summit, which is the first unlockable truck, and it's higher than a lot of other trucks, which is saying something. Doesn't have great airtime, but its speed and turbo absolutely make up for it. Like this thing, the speed and the turbo more than make up for the fact that it can't hold the air, but it can get the air, just can't stay there. Absolutely the best of the trucks that are just Boulder ripoffs. Best of the Boulder Bros. Next up is the Mako. It's speedy, but it certainly doesn't feel like it. This thing has abysmal turbo, and it makes it really difficult to take advantage of the air stat. Other than that, pretty middle of the road, I'd say. Not much to say on it. Then we have the Razor. Has amazing ground speed, but it's slippery, and combined with the big hitbox, tree runs are pretty difficult, as well as drifting, which, being slippery, it shouldn't be that hard with, but oftentimes you just slide out of the turn into a tree, so it's whatever. Doesn't really ever lose a smash though, which is something I've noticed. It's pretty good in that regard. Very good, like, grounded truck. Keep this thing on the ground and it's gonna put in the work for you. Next up is the Trekker. It's got a high speed stat, and the turbo is a bit worse than it seems. It's a bit too grippy to make corrections, but it excels in covering distance in the air more if its landings are smooth. So you get that speed going, get this thing in the air, land it nice, and then get back in the air as soon as possible. And it'll do you good then, but that's about the extent of it. Next we have the Alpine, an excellent aerial truck. I am a big fan of the Alpine. This thing is really good in the early game. It feels way faster than it is. It's pretty good at tree runs too, because it's real tiny, little tiny baby man. It's difficult to stay ahead on tracks without jumps, but on tracks where you do have jumps, it's pretty damn good. Overall, it's a high risk, high reward type vehicle. Next up, we have the Rad, which is what the Wolf wishes it was. And it's got a fucking baller paint job because there's a hurricane on this thing. It's got good speed, handles great, air stat feels good, and it smashes more often than getting smashed, surprisingly. Again, it's basically just a high tier Wolf. Next up, we have the Wolverine, one of the really late game trucks. It's got excellent speed, and it's really good at tree runs, but it's ultimately lackluster in drifting and handling due to its high grip. Also, the tire hitbox is kind of odd, so when I was testing for this tier list in general, it's actually harder to like jump over trees or get between them because the tires poke out a bit, and it'll crash you out even if you don't really like flip or get torn apart or whatnot. It just kind of it's odd, but overall pretty good truck. Next up is the high tier. These are trucks I actively look forward to unlocking and will use if I'm not using one of the top tier trucks, if I'm trying to give somebody a little bit of a chance, even though I'm probably not going to. First up is the Mongoose. It's got incredible speed. Turbo isn't even needed to outrun other trucks that are using their turbo. This thing is fucking ridiculously fast. The airtime deficit is honestly negligible due to just its sheer speed. It's got excellent handling too, and it's about 50-50 on its smashes, which is honestly better than what you can ask for on some other ones. Next up is the Blaster, and I am a big fan of the Blaster. All around, this truck is excellent. It's not the best at tree running because it's got a bit of a bigger hitbox, but essentially take everything from the Mongoose and make it cooler. The Blaster is just a better Mongoose. Next up, we have the Saguaro. Basically what the Firefly wishes it was, aspires to be, but can literally never live up to. The Saguaro is the definition of a glass cannon, an aerial glass cannon. That's basically exactly what it is, and it's way faster than what it seems. Lastly, for the high tier, we have the Kodiak. Awesome speed and turbo. It's literally never slow. It always wins smashes. I have not seen this thing get crushed by another truck, excluding what you're obviously thinking if you've played this game. It's a bit slippery, but surprisingly not as bad at tree runs as you would expect. Finally, we arrive at the top tier. And to start off the top tier, we have the final standard unlockable truck, the Wasp. Obviously, maximum speed and turbo, and the air feels max as a result. The grip and handling complement it incredibly, and it surprisingly wins most smashes. And it has a smaller hitbox, which gives it a big advantage when it comes to tree runs. So overall, this thing is excelling in every area: speed, drifting, tree runs, truck smashes, you name it, the Wasp has it, dude, I'm telling you. And next up is probably the most controversial statement between me and the 3 other Excite Truck fans. Because in second place, we have the Crazy Monster Truck. Literally an invincible truck that has maximum speed, maximum turbo, and maximum air, but lower grip and slower handling. And now you might say, Raccoon, you fucking idiot, this thing is invincible, why the fuck isn't it the best truck in the game? And if you're seeing the stats, I've raced with this thing and gotten less S ranks than races run, which might seem like an odd metric, but bear with me. You can't activate the turbo on the Crazy Monster Truck. It's just always on, which is fine because you don't have to worry about the temperature gauge, but you're always turboing. And it's honestly not the best thing in the world, because sometimes you need to let off the turbo to make a tighter turn, or to better line up for a tree run, or to better navigate the track, because this fucking game is an acid trip at times. So always going fast isn't what you want, even though most of the time it is, which is why the Crazy Monster Truck is so high up. It literally does have maximum stats. It never loses a truck matchup. And I mean, it's literally made to be the best truck in the game because you unlock it after beating the entire fucking game. But at last, one truck remains better. And it is, obviously, the standard monster truck. Maximum speed, maximum turbo, and maximum air. Literally the same stats as the Crazy Monster Truck, but you are in control. You decide when to turbo. You can ultimately control this truck better. It's never going to lose a smash. It's always going to be fast as fuck. It's always going to get good airtime. And it's really difficult to overheat this thing, so at that point, if you overheat it, you need to reassess how you're playing your game. This truck is the best because it's meant to be the best. You unlock this thing after getting star rank, or I think after winning every cup with a passing grade. And I think all star ranks is the Crazy Monster Truck. But in my opinion, which you can tell by the perfect match of races run to S ranks awarded, that this truck is, in my opinion, the best in the game. So there you have it. That is my official tier list of every truck in Excite Truck. This tier list took a while to make. There's a lot of testing, and it's basically still just my opinion. So don't let this tier list tell you how to play the game. If you haven't ever tried it, do give it a try if you still have a Wii. Holy shit, this is literally the most fun game you'll ever play in your entire life if you love racing games. But at the end of the day, it's up to you to decide which trucks you like best. Again, this is just my opinion. But feel free, if you've ever played this game, to agree or disagree with me. Or if you're just stopping by, leave a comment. Tell me if there's any other odd, obscure games that I might have to give a tier list on. Sure can try. But if you like videos like this, and want to see more, probably shouldn't subscribe to my channel because I'm doing a bunch of random shit, so don't be surprised when I'm not releasing 30 more Excitedruck videos after this. Even though I might. I don't know. Anyway, outro. See ya.